Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte clear liners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you could pay with your HSA, FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Pierre Tsigaridis. He is a director, cinematographer, writer, and producer whose debut feature film, Two Witches, is currently available on VOD. Welcome to the show!
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Boy, I can't wait to talk about the movie that you brought. But before we do get that far, let's take it back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
I like to tell people that I've always been, I've been like into horror or like into spooky stuff as a child ever since I could remember. So okay. It's kind of pretty vague, I would say. I would always look for monsters in, dark corners of my room when I was a kid. So I've always been like interested in the spooky aspect of everything. I felt like it was like the most entertaining aspect of things. Mm. Like, some people would say humor is more, is entertaining. To me, it's like the scare is what really stimulates me creatively, artistically. Honestly, for some reason, I don't know, but I've always been really interested in that. So then quickly, my interest for horror films, was triggered very early on. Too young. That's why we're here to talk about some scarred memories. But so I would always try to sneak in whenever, watch some movies on VHS that I was not allowed to watch.
Yeah. Do you remember the first horror movie that you saw, or the one that kind of like leaps out in your mind?
So the very first one that I was obsessed with was Scream.
Okay.
And I'll go back to that when we mentioned The Devil's Advocate, because when I watched The Devil's Advocate, I had already seen Scream, and I thought that I was like, that I had all the package I needed as a very young. I was probably like, it was like 1997, so I probably saw it in 1998. So I saw movies when I was too young. A lot of movies when I was too young, because I was born in 1991. So
okay, wow.
I saw some pretty graphic movies when I was like 6 or 7 years old. The very first memory is, I think it's very vague, but it's when my dad was watching Dracula, the Coppola one.
Oh, wow.
He was, yeah. And I love this movie too. Keanu Reeves again.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves again.
With another terrible accent.
Yes, yeah. But I remember I was not watching it. I was just passing by, and I was trying to sneak in behind him. And it was like the scene where Dracula is like turned into a bat in the maze. great scene.
Oh,
so
great scene.
I was not allowed. I was like really young. That was like, I was really, really young, and I was not allowed, but I just trying to, see a few shots. And I was like, I was hooked. So then I couldn't really see the whole thing. I saw the movie eventually later. But that was my first cinematic memory of a horror film is like a maze, dark, foggy maze with a woman running after, like, being chased by some like hairy creature.
Hell yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible.
What a start.
Yeah.
Like I'm always thinking about like my first introduction to horror was Dracula, but we're talking 1930s Bela Lugosi Dracula. So like it's wild to me when because I mean it's such a benign movie now, right? When you think about the 1930s, and so Dracula, Francis Ford being like the first kind of horrifying images that you would see from a horror movie is wild. It's pretty spooky.
I mean, when he's the makeup is really good too. When he's like
so good.
Yeah. Other than that, my first film ever that I watched and loved, and the first memory is Jurassic Park. It's not really a horror film, even though it's a little violent for a
scary.
kid.
It's got some scary, moments.
It's scary when Laura Dern needs to put the power
arm
back on.
Yes.
And that's scary.
It's a great moment.
Yeah. So that was my all-time favorite, like, non-horror kind of movie that I always go back to, and that's my first memory of just like dinosaurs. But that was really, really young, because that was like probably in France, it was 1995 when I saw that, and I was 4 years old. Yeah.
I saw Jaws when I was 4. So, yeah. Just kind of throw you in the deep end and see how you...
Yeah.
But you said you were...
It's hard to swim after that.
I know. Oh, God.
It's hard to learn how to swim.
But you said that you were really obsessed with Scream. What other movies, like were other scary movies in particular, were you kind of like really into when you were younger?
Well, I got really into Scream and then into slashers, I feel like, because I was obsessed with this the idea of the mask, and I can see Ghost's face behind you. By so I think my interest was Scream, and then from Scream, you have like the Halloween and the Friday the 13th and all that. But Scream was a little shocking to me a little bit, especially the opening scene when I was a kid. But then I think I was immune after that. I was like really enjoying all of the Halloweens and the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street. But then the Devil's Advocate happened shortly after that. And my other interest, I think, was like more like the spooky, supernatural devil or ghost stuff that happened more in the 2000s, when like the Japanese movies started to really take over. That was like a new scare. Like The Ring, like the Ring terrified me, like it terrified a lot of people too. So The Ring, anything that had that kind of stuff. And obviously the Exorcist, but I waited a little bit. When I was a kid watching The Exorcist after I got my ass kicked by the Devil's Advocate, I was like, I'm gonna take a breather here. But eventually, I love The Exorcist. And I love another movie, The Exorcist 3, I love.
The Exorcist 3 is really good.
Which is kind of what?
I still need to see that one. I've seen 2, but I haven't seen 3. Yeah.
Okay, no, watch the 3. It has some vibes of the Devil's Advocate in the sense that it's like this 90s, super 90s to me, devil thriller oriented movie that has some spooky scenes, some really spooky
iconic
scenes.
Jump scare, right?
Yeah. Arguably the best jump scare ever for me. Just let alone you should watch it just for that.
Well, now I really have to watch it.
Yeah. And the acting
much
is really
better
good.
than 2.
Yeah. No, the acting is really good. Also, like George C. Scott, who plays he elevates the film to more of a he elevates the film like Al Pacino would elevate, or like Charlize Theron elevates the film for The Devil's Advocate, where it's like, I'm watching something, but it's got like these big name actors that
Hell yeah.
They play really well. Their performance is really strong, so it's like it's even more engaging, I feel like.
Yeah. You had said that you always kind of been interested in horror and spookiness. Were you a scared kid growing up? Did movies and things scare you, or were you pretty?
I don't think so. I think, and my mom would what's it called? She would approve. the movie that really kicked my ass was The Devil's Advocate, because, and I'll go into more details exactly how it happened, but other than that, I was the guy who was watching like Texas Chainsaw, Alien, all those movies, and I was like during recess, during elementary school, people would listen to me like, oh, what have you watched? And I was like, okay, guys, let me tell you what happens in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
You were that kid on the playground. That's so cool. You were the kid. They're like, explain the horror movie to me. That's so cool. Because my dad would quickly let me watch pretty much anything. So yeah, I was usually the kid that had seen the stuff that other people wouldn't be, allowed to see. Hell yeah.
Were films important for you growing up? Was your family a big film?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I want to say I started so when I saw Scream, I got like so hooked with the opening scene. I thought it was so well done. I don't know. I don't know what something triggered, like the visual aspect, the kind of like theatrical aspect of how everything is built together that leads to the murder, from the call to the little creepy things that the killer, says, to the questions, to the murder. I wanted to redo popcorn. That popcorn. Everything is perfect in this scene, but I wanted to recreate that for some reason. So I quickly had the film kind of like desire to do. So with my brother, I would have the mask and we would, with an old camcorder, we would redo some Scream like reenactments, or we would come up with new scenes, or I would always be the killer, so cool. Which was funny because I was like the little brother, so I was like super short.
Hell yeah, that's amazing.
But yeah, so very early on, I wanted to replicate what I was seeing.
Cool. Well, and so you said you weren't really scared a lot as a kid, but are there any movies that you've seen recently that have gotten under your skin or unnerved you at all?
Yes, I think I'm one of these people. When I watch a horror film, I try to first I try to be scared, so I allow myself to be scared. I try to, shut off my filmmaker brain and not look at the lighting, not look at the technical stuff. I like to put like headphones on and be in the dark. You know, I'd like to, because I feel like, I'm not afraid. If I watch a horror film, I'm allowing myself to be scared. So yeah, I want to say that I jump. I cry sometimes if I see an emotional scene. I'm a easy viewer. I'm not like, I try to really be immersed in the story. So lately, what's the movie that spooked me? Hold on, let me see. Grab my phone. I have a list of films usually that I watched recently. But I'm pretty, I mean, I like to admit sometimes I'm not the kind of person who's going to pretend I was not scared if I'm scared.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I always find it hard, especially when we're kind of critiquing films or, looking at it analytical, to like give myself over to a film a lot of times recently. But like there have been some for me recently that have really gotten under my skin, like Smile or Barbarian. I
have not seen Smile yet, and I need to. Barbarian made me jump for sure. Barbarian made me jump. Barbarian, it worked for me. I really allowed myself to, Barbarian was like spooky for sure. Mm-hmm. There was one movie that I thought was good and not a lot of people talked about it, was this movie that I saw in the theater a while ago, but I think it was in 2022. It's called Cursed. This kind of like werewolf movie.
Oh yeah.
That movie spooked me. Like the dream sequences with the weird scarecrow, and I felt like that was a good movie that not a lot of people talked about. I was like,
I remember seeing that back at Sundance in, was it 21 maybe?
Yeah, it had a different name.
Yeah, pieces, something about...
Eight for silver.
Eight for silver. Yeah. And they call it The Cursed, yeah. Hold on, let me see what other movies I've seen 2021, 2022. I saw something, I saw too many. And a movie that spooked me... The one, it didn't really spook me, but it made me go oh, what the fuck, was the movie on Shudder called, what's it called? Don't Speak No Evil.
Oh yeah.
This kind of Danish movie.
Yeah. Oh, that one's fucked up. Mm-hmm. That one is very fucked up.
That is fucked up.
Damn. Oh yeah.
It's been a good year for stuff like that.
Yeah. That was like a good, it triggered some reactions from me for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't been in 2022, I haven't been super scared. I would have to, I might, and then it's not popping here, but
no worries. Yeah. But so you talked a little bit about how you got into filmmaking and you were making movies with your brother. So let's talk about Two Witches. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what the movie is?
Yes. So Two Witches is a movie about two witches, but it's kind of like my love letter to all the movies I wanted to see when I was a kid. It's kind of like it's a spooky movie about witches, basically. It's a movie about witchcraft, about this woman that leaves her her dark witch inheritance to her granddaughter. And, it triggers some spooky stuff happening. It's a movie that's hard to describe. And in a lot of reviews, a lot of people describe it in too much. And not that I want to compare it to Barbarian, but I feel like it's a movie that if you don't know anything about it, it's just good to go see it and not, because it's two stories that are loosely connected. And, I think it's full of surprises because the structure is unconventional. And so it makes it kind of a cool, surprising ride, in my opinion. So it's better to, I would just say it's a bit of Drag Me to Hell. It's a bit of Rosemary's Baby. It's a bit of The Witch, maybe.
It's got a little bit of quasi Suspiria,
sprinkled with some Suspiria. So then that's it, I would say.
I was going to ask because you said that it was sort of the kind of movies that you wanted to see. I was getting sort of like a European, maybe Italian horror theme from a lot of the techniques employed in it. Was that intentional? Do you like Italian horror and giallo and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I love Italian giallo. I love European style films, and I feel like with Two Witches, since I also operate the camera and everything, I just generally was inspired by the European way of filmmaking. I would say, from French films, Italian films, films where there's a lot of we're not afraid to zoom, we're not afraid to use all those kind of I don't know if you would say tacky way of filmmaking, or in the editing, the way you're in Europe, we can edit. We don't follow what we called maybe a Hollywood way of cutting things, where on American sets, I've been on sets and people are like, oh, this isn't going to cut. This isn't going to do this. We need to be so precise with the camera coverage. That needs to be like the Hollywood, when you see a Spielberg movie, when you see I don't know, and I feel like in America, a lot of filmmakers think like that. And they always very worried about, is that going to even cut? Where in Europe, we're a lot more loose. We're like, I'm trying to get the performance that I want, and then I'm figuring out how I'm going to cut. But it's not a deal breaker if I have shots that are not supposed to be cutting together. And I feel like Two Witches has some stuff like that. Same with some zooms where people will be like, oh, you can't zoom now. You've zoomed 2 shots ago, or the last shot was already a zoom, or you've been zooming for 10 shots in a row. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to zoom again. I'm going to zoom in. I don't know. It's more free. And it's also less money, usually there's not as much money in these old European films. So camera movement wise, you have to be more creative with what you can do with the lens, instead of you not having a dolly, not having a Steadicam, not having a crane.
So you were talking about the kind of European style of editing, and I just started immediately thinking about Don't Look Now, which we had rewatched recently, and that's what was films. Kind of. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely one of my favorite films. A big influence for Two Witches, actually, too.
I can see that. Yeah.
Absolutely love Don't Look Now. Yeah, Don't Look Now. It's a lot of kind of sometimes really jerky editing. The sex scene when they have sex, for example.
The sex scene.
Yeah. All those crazy zooms. I mean, the zoom. I think The Conjuring kind of brought the zooms back in horror, and everybody was like, "Oh shit! Actually, a punch in like that is scary." I love zooms. I've always been a zoom person, and to me, it's also a good way to be intimate with the actors where I'm not telling them that I'm doing a close up. Sometimes if I feel like they're, you know, I don't have to cut and be like, all right, let's punch in, I can be more intrusive and I can sneak in and I can, and then they would be like, oh, all right, let's do it again close up. I was like, no, I got it already. They're like, what, you did? You got the close up? I was like, yeah, I didn't have to tell you what I was doing. And I feel like the Zoom makes you really sneaky like that.
Yeah.
Or it really enhances a performance too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so you talk about performances, and the performance by Rebecca Kennedy is is so incredible. She's so fucking scary in this movie. We won't give it too much away, but she's incredible. So what was that like how did you find her and get her involved in the project? And then what was it like directing her and getting that just chilling performance out of her?
Well, I'm really grateful to have her. She kicks ass. She definitely kicks ass. It's so great to have her. So how did she end up on the project? I have to thank Christina Klebe, who plays Rachel, Christina. And we were thinking about some other people and it was not panning out. And she sent me a message and she was like, I have a friend that I think would be perfect. So honestly, kudos to her for that. She said, I have a friend that I think would be great. And then she showed me immediately Rebecca's reel and Rebecca's like pictures. And I was like, yeah, I think she's great. But no auditions. It was like really kind of a last minute thing where you get lucky, where you get super lucky. And then the first day when we started shooting, we immediately clicked. Like she immediately understood the character, or at least the idea what the character was for her was exactly what I had written, really. So we clicked. Like the very first scene we shot was like the sex scene, which is not really the easiest. Let's put it this way. Right. But whenever I started doing like the close-ups of her and I was like, I hope I'm gonna, find the right words to try to tell her what I'm thinking about this. And she immediately started doing, okay, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna do this, let's try that. And I was like having the camera and I was doing things, and we quickly got some amazing stuff that was just the foundation for everything else. So after that, we quickly understood what the character was and how we wanted to take it further. And from that, it was a really nice, easy, I want to say it was an easy process. It was not a lot of, we did some, brainstorming, but it was very as I'm making the shots, very interactive with the camera, with how it looked on camera. And like I said, she was really prepared. She whenever she would already have an idea of what her character would be in each scene without even me telling her. So, for example, the scene where she knocks on the door for Christmas with Danielle Kennedy, like she already had like and then I tweaked things to make it creepy here or creepier here or there. But she would always have like an idea of what would be the general energy that she would bring. And after that, we would take it further. I mean, I love like cringy stuff, things that really make you uncomfortable. I love that stuff. So I would just be like, okay, how can you make me cringe even more? And we would just push it further. Same for the apple thing. We were like, oh, why don't you just stuff that apple? Don't eat it. First she was like supposed to eat it. And then I was like, no, you're not eating that thing. You're,
Hell yeah.
But yeah. And so it as it grew, I mean, as it went on, the character became, I think I'm really happy with how it turned out. I feel like the character became more and more, I would say charismatic in a way.
She's incredibly watchable.
Yeah. She hooks people's like attention, and we were like kind of dancing, like we wanted to always make contrast between what she looks like, the way she can be very harmless, and the contrast with her faces, the contrast with her actions, the contrast with what she says. with like the words she uses that, you know, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Did that come out of this little person?
Yeah.
So it was all about contrast, like surprising.
So I hope this isn't a spoiler, but the movie ends with a to be continued.
Yes. Is
it gonna be continued?
Yes. Yeah. I wrote the sequel.
Is it called Three Witches?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
That's the question, the $1 million question. I'll let you know. But no, I wrote the script. Obviously, I don't want to give out anything, but you would expect that Masha, Rebecca Kennedy's character, is still in the movie, and I'm pretty happy with what I wrote. That if I can tease, I could say it's better. I can say that it's crazier, it's scarier. It's I think it's much better. So
Hell yeah. Oh, I'm
I'll just
very
leave it at
excited
that.
because I watched this on Halloween. This is like my Halloween movie, and I was like so much more creeped out than I had expected to be, and it was just like way more shocking too. And it's just really, it's incredible. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm glad you watched it on Halloween, because going back, to what you're saying, like, how did Two Witches came to be? One of the things also that I'd be like, I want to make a movie that I would love to see as a kid, but I want to see a movie that I would love to see on Halloween. You know, very visual, very Halloweeny, very atmospheric, very spooky season type of vibe.
Yes, it was a great movie to watch on Halloween. But Pierre, we have talked about Two Witches and your horror history, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
I brought The Devil's Advocate.
Oh my god.
By Taylor Hackford. I don't even know his name.
Hackford, I believe.
Hackford. Yeah, Taylor Hackford. With Al Pacino. I don't know if you've heard of this actor.
Little known guy, very indie.
Yeah, very indie.
So, in The Devil's Advocate, an exceptionally adept Florida lawyer is offered a job at a high-end New York City law firm with a high-end boss. It's the biggest opportunity of his career to date. It's a very basic synopsis from IMDb. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so take us back to the beginning. I have to know what your thoughts were watching this for the first time, because this has a lot. There's a lot in this movie. So take us back to when you first saw this. How did you see it? Give us your horror story.
Yes, I will. It's a 2-hour long movie, so there's a lot of things to say.
It sure is.
I have a whole story of why this movie scarred me, and as a horror guy, it's usually very unexpected. I mean, people don't, are very surprised when they say that this is the movie that scared me arguably the most, because people will be like, what? The movie with Keanu Reeves? Yes, this movie. So, like I said, I had seen Scream. I had seen a lot of movies. I was like into my, movie horror obsession as like a 7-year-old or something like that. And it was this Saturday night.
Okay.
And we had, with my family, we had spent like the whole day in Paris doing like shopping and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of this day, we were going to have McDonald's, which was like a big thing, because, I would have McDonald's, maybe once a month or once every 2 months. So we would have McDonald's, and we would go to like the French equivalent of Blockbuster, and we would rent a movie. So I had seen the trailer of this movie, and in the trailer, in France, at least, I don't know, there was like a lot of nudity, and there's a lot of nudity in the movie. So there was like a lot of nudity, a lot of, like fire, and there was like a little bit of blood. Anyways, I was like, I had seen the trailer, and I was like obsessed. I was like, I want to see The Devil's Advocate. It's got like the devil in the title. It's got like some naked women. I was like 7 years old.
Yep.
I was like, and my brother and everybody was like, yeah, let's watch that. So my mom was like, I don't know if you should watch this, but you've seen Scream. I guess it's fine. I guess it's fine. So perfect night. I was like so excited. We were having like McDonald's, eating this, and the movie was a little shocking to me at first, like the sexual, but I was confused. As a kid, you're like confused between you're a little shocked, but you're also extremely excited.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was enjoying it, even though I was like, oh, it's maybe a little more serious than I thought, or more sexual, more sick, than I thought.
Yeah.
But then that scene, I don't know if you know, I don't know if you guys would expect what scene killed me, but there's a scene, and I call it the dressing room scene.
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So, why did that movie scare me? And it's a big spoiler. It's a big spoiler. Yes,
we're going to dig into all the spoilers.
Oh, yeah, no, we're spoilers.
Yeah. I think this movie scared me most than any other movie because it's a movie that it doesn't set the audience to be scared. It's like a 90s thriller film about like a lawyer and about like his career. And we know that, okay, there's a baddie, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't set the movie, the premise doesn't set to see demons. You don't open the movie and it's not The Exorcist. It's not Drag Me to Hell. It's not like demons. You're not going to see freaking demons in this movie. It's a Keanu Reeves, Al Pacino movie. And so you see this scene where Charlize Theron, she's hanging out with these two women that are the wives of attorneys in this law firm, and they're bored, and so they're trying out clothes in this dressing room, and the setup of this scene is perfect. I mean, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, this movie was bound to freak me out, because first it's got like the sexual aspect of things. So she takes her top off, this woman, Jackie, I think and her performance is really good. I think she's like kind of like reassuring, and she's charming, but something's off. Yeah. She's like kind of hypocrite, but you can't really tell. And that as a kid, I would still feel that thing. So, but she takes her top off. So me as a kid, I was like, I'm seeing, women's breasts on Saturday night, like it's, it's like a very unusual. So it put me into one kind of like, it drew me into one direction, and then deceived me right after when
Whiplash.
She says like, oh, touch my breast. And the other one is like and that, again, looking back on like Two Witches, I got influenced by all those like really kind of awkward moments where she's like, no, feel my boob. And she's like, no, I don't want to touch it. Okay, all right, I'll touch it. And so it's like very sexual. And then she looks, and then she's about to put her top on, and right before she does, she gives her like a little glimpse, a little look at Charlize, and then her face like kind of morphs. Mm-hmm. Her face morphs into that terrifying demon face. And I think the last thing that terrified me the most is that this is 1990, right? So, I mean, we're in the 90s. If I watch a horror film, I'm going to see scary makeup. I'm going to see a cut with like blood, with like like a prosthetic. And this was a digital. Mm-hmm. And I know out there's a lot of people that love, like practical effects. And I'm the first one to say that too. But that digital effect.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. For that time.
1997.
I don't know who did that.
It looks good today.
It looks good today. And the fact that there's no cut, and that you don't expect that, and with that, effective kind of like jump scare sound. I remember I was eating, and then I turned white, and then my mom turned and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I stood up. I was like, I have to go. And I left.
Oh no.
Yeah. It terrified me. It's like, and I had like her face in my, I remember that demon face like so clear. I would close my eyes. I would see it. I would go in the dark. I would see it. Yeah. And my mom felt bad. She was like, oh shit. I think he got really scared. And it was funny because everybody else was like, fine. They were like, oh, okay, that's a demon. She's a demon. They were more scared by Scream, by some like guy with a mask chasing people. But me, I was like so surprised because I got from like sexually excited to like kind of like awkward, and then to like super scared. Too many confusing emotions,
Well, I was wondering if that was like one of them, because as I was rewatching this, I was like, I can't imagine. I didn't know how old you were when you saw it, but I was like, if you were a kid seeing this movie, I can't imagine that sort of like whiplash of that sequence, because I mean, then the hands like moving on her like body,
and then the hands touch her breast from the inside, they squeeze. and it's like so shocking and intrusive, and it's like so perverted. And I feel like that's one of the things. Is like this movie is extremely perverted.
Oh, it's horny. Like, it is a horny movie.
It's horny and it's
so horny.
Yeah.
Al Pacino is so
really
hot
sick.
in this movie.
He really is. So you left though. Did you end up coming back or?
I ended up coming back and ended up being freaked out by some other scene. So the demon faces after, I was fine-ish. But then the other scene that freaked me out was the scene where, again, Charlize, she wakes up and she hears like some like quick footsteps in the apartment, you know, like she's alone. And then she hears like some baby cries and she gets her knife and she's scared. This is scary. Like she turns around and then they put like really, really loud, like Foley effects of like something dropping in the bathroom or something like a chair moving, and it's really freaky. I think it was really effective. And eventually she sees this little boy in this room, and she's like, "Oh, what are you playing with, little kid?" And then the little toddler turns around and it's like this kind of like super gory uterus or something. I didn't even know what it was, but then she immediately looks at her belly, and then she's bleeding, and then she wakes up and she screams, "They took my ovaries! They took my ovaries!" It's really freaky.
So, okay, I'm glad you brought that scene up, because this is a scene that I thought I had made up in my head, and have realized that I did not actually make it up in my head, because I had never seen this movie all the way through, but I had only seen that moment. And I think it was on TV, or someone in my house was watching it, and I walked by and saw this exact moment. And for years, I thought that I was making it up, that it wasn't real. And then I realized, holy shit, this is Devil's Advocate. And I thought it was going to be way scarier than what I loved it. But that part is so scary, and like, it haunted my head. I had no idea what it was from. I had no idea what the baby was playing with. And like, in my head, I think I saw it and I was like super little. I conflated the apartment where I grew up with my parents with that scene. So I thought it was in my apartment. And obviously I did not. And when I say apartment, I mean tiny 2-bedroom, not the giant apartment in this movie, which is funny, but it's just so funny watching this movie and thinking, this is the scene that has haunted me for fucking decades, and I finally know where it's from. A campy-ass movie about Al Pacino as a devil lawyer in New York City. But I also didn't realize this is like this is a Rosemary's Baby-esque situation. Like, even, like, they move into the apartment building with these guys, and it is incredibly Rosemary's Baby without the baby actually happening, but them preventing her from having a baby. And that was kind of cool. I didn't expect that from this movie. I think that's the best quality of this movie, is that you don't expect some of the horrific scenes. I didn't expect anything in this fucking movie, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, we start off this movie with a fucking, like, we are thrown into a child molestation case and I'm just like, oh, okay, like, this is where we're going. Like, no, like, just Heather Matarazzo as a young girl on the stand talking about her math teacher groping her. And I was like, okay, I guess that's just what we're doing. And we just jump right in to this movie. Yeah, no, this movie, I when I rewatched it as an adult, I even realized that it was tackling even sicker subjects than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was more like scared by the graphic aspect, but I was still, it's really sick when they use the whole themes of the movie. You know, they go, what you let people get away with, and it's quite philosophical, and you see the ugliness of the evil of men, like what humans do. It's actually pretty smart movie, even though it's not really subtle. Like, you know, the opening scene, when you look at it now in court, it would not be like that. Probably not be as on the nose, you know.
But yet, it's still effective.
It is very effective.
It still does the job.
I was thinking as I was rewatching this, like, I don't think this is how court really happens. But, like,
no.
Because, like, he is very quick to get, like, everything just thrown off. Like, things happen super quick in this movie in terms of, like, here's the problem. Here's, like, a complication. Now the problem's solved. We're moving on. And I'm like,
exactly.
This definitely takes, like, a very quick look at like the lawyer process, but it's still effective.
It's still really effective. I mean, it's still it serves the story, and the story still moves forward really well, in my opinion. If you're an attorney, you watch this movie, you probably laugh like, all right, whatever. It might ask yourself some uncomfortable questions.
Yes.
But this movie made me realize how much I love courtroom dramas. Like, I love a courtroom drama. Like, I just think
it's extremely entertaining.
They're so entertaining, especially when it's like Keanu Reeves with a horrible Southern accent, like yelling at people, like yelling at like an 8-year-old. Like, it's just incredible. It's incredible. And it's just so funny watching that. And I always, even if it's not campy, like, I love the drama of it all and like things coming together.
The theatrical nature of it.
It is so good. It's like it is like theater. It's like watching a play. It's so.
It is like theater, absolutely. And like you said, this movie is really campy. A little bit like Two Witches is campy, but then there's some scenes that are like not campy at all, and then it's like kind of like this roller coaster. Or this movie is kind of a roller coaster. It's got like a lot of different emotions, different stuff. And I want to say one thing that I didn't really quite get that I got recently is when, at the very beginning, when the reporter says, "You got to give me a quote. You got to give me a quote. Maybe it's your time to lose." And then he goes like, he does this really 90s, I feel like really 90s thing. Like he goes like, and it's like so over the top. And then Keanu Reeves does it like, he goes like 10 times.
I'm gonna up your ante and just like make my whole mouth go.
It's kind of hilarious.
It is.
But then what does he do after that? He puts water on his face and he looks at himself in the mirror and then he starts to make a really weird grin.
Yes,
like a Keanu Reeves weird grin. Exactly. And I was like, because in Two Witches, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like this kind of like ugly facial expression that I'm kind of very always like interested in. And he does it there. And I was like, oh, that's something that I didn't really quite remember, but maybe subconsciously I remembered. And then he's about to defend the pedophile, where like he shows ugliness, and I feel like that was like a really subtle or cool way to show it, because that smile, if you pause it, he looks fucking horrible.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
And it really plays into like the idea of vanity, which is a thing that Al Pacino's Satan talks about as his favorite sin, because in that moment, that reporter is just like, oh, he's playing into that vanity moment. Like, oh, it's your time to lose,
He making it personal.
Mm-hmm. And he doubles down on it.
Exactly. And he doubles down. He's like, all right, because I don't want to lose, because he made it personal, I'm going to defend this pedophile that he knows is a pedophile. So there's some subtle stuff in this movie. There's actually a lot more subtle stuff than I thought. Another thing that I thought was cool was when he's defending the Philip Moyes guy, the guy from like the Caribbeans, that gutted like or slit the throat of a goat.
Of the goat. Mm-hmm.
And he's basically like a sorcerer. He's like, he does like evil witchcraft, this guy, but they turn it into he's, practicing his religion, but he's like just a warlock or something. And by the way, played by Delroy, what's his name? Delroy Lindo, that I love, this actor.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, that's him. He's not credited in it for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, really?
But he's really good. And he's sitting there in the courtroom, and when Keanu Reeves is proving like his case and he's like winning the case, and the DA, the other guy, is like, he looks at the Moyes guy, the Delroy, and they stare at each other. Moyes stares at him, and then the guy starts coughing. And he stops coughing, and the whole scene he's coughing, and then the judge is like, all right, Murdo, like, stop. And then you cut to Moyes' face, like, looking like, and you see it's just like this subtle kind of witchcraft.
Well, and it's funny too, because it's always like, they talk about how like how could he pay? And like, we help people like this. And it's like that very kind of subtle connection of the devil with other people in the world and that kind of thing too. And it's funny how this movie does kind of try to play a little bit in subtlety, and then at the end is just like an all-out like camp exposition dump. But that's why it's so fun, because like Terry and I talked about this, like the first hour is really just like a drama about a guy moving to New York and like him and his wife adjusting to a very different lifestyle and like moving into this apartment building and painting walls and having long hours. Like it very much is a courtroom drama, marriage drama.
Well, I was thinking as I was rewatching this, I was like, you know, courtroom dramas were very popular in the 90s with because of John Grisham, like The Firm from 1993, The Pelican Brief, The Client, A Time to Kill, The Chamber. Like all these movies are coming out either at around the same time, like The Rainmaker, or like right before this movie started, you know, coming out. And so this first hour plays almost like a John Grisham novel in a way. Like maybe it's not as lawyerly in terms of the actual courtroom drama, but it plays like we're watching a lawyer moment. And then at 56 minutes in, that is when like it's the dressing room. And it's like all of a sudden, because when I was telling
freaking dressing room,
I know, and when I was telling Mary Beth, I was like, because it's a long movie, and it's like I had to watch it over 2 days because of the time commitment.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But I was like, 56 minutes in, right there is a perfect time to stop, because that first hour is literally just a courtroom drama. And then it's like the next hour and a half is like adding in all the supernatural and basically unraveling everything that we had seen before.
Yeah. Well, that's why it scared me. That's why it caught me off guard, because the first hour, it's like it was entertaining, but it's not the movie I'd expected it was.
Right.
And then, if the dressing room was like maybe a scene, that would appear 10 minutes in, maybe it wouldn't have, scarred me that much, but
it leads you into like this false expectation of what you're going to get. And then it just like changes on a dime.
Yeah. And when I look at horror films, I'm like, maybe this should be done more often, like maybe really mix genres and make it not a horror film, but then have like a terrifying scene in the middle, and they don't really justify, they don't advertise it as such, this movie happens to have a really scary scene and that's it. Like for example, there's this movie, I don't know if you know the movie, it's called Amour, the movie by Haneke that won the like Palme d'Or in
oh Jesus, that really, really sad one.
About the old couple.
The old couple, yes.
I don't know if you've seen this movie. I haven't
seen that one.
Well, it's a really drama, like
dark,
really sad, really, really dark and depressing, but it's not scary. There's one scene that's scary in my opinion. It's like when the guy's brushing his teeth and then he's actually in a nightmare, but it doesn't.
Oh yeah.
We don't, and he hears like a knock on the door, and I'm not even going to tell you more, but he hears a knock on the door and he's going to go check it out. That scene is creepy. But it's not a horror film at all. And it's just one scene. That scene scared me because I was not expecting it. And no one expected on like a award-winning Palme d'Or movie.
Yeah.
But there's a freaky scene. So I feel like the devil's advocate for that is really effective. And then when the supernatural creeps in, it creeps in, I think the amount of like fantasy, like when it's really well like sprinkled, I feel like. Because there was another scene that made me very uncomfortable. It's the scene when I think, when is it? Hold on, the timeline. I think it's right after she says they took my ovaries, and then he's like, let's make a baby or something.
Yes.
And then they have sex, but then Keanu Reeves, like the editing is so well done because she morphs into the Christabella, the other. Yeah, exactly. And he's like aroused and he's like changing energy. He's more into like a much more like,
more
like
aggressive and
sucking on toes.
Exactly. Sucking on toes, maybe asking for like some oral sex that would not be appropriate with his real wife. And then she's like,
and then it cuts to Charlize Theron's like tear-soaked face, and she's like crying on the floor, and I'm
she's
just like,
"What are you doing?
You're not here." She's like sobbing. It's just so fucking. It's like fucked up and sad, and it's even worse when you find out at the end that is in fact his half sister, and it's like, oh,
it's even worse.
It's so gross.
No, it's really. as a kid, that scene also, again, I was like, what am I supposed to, I was confused. It was like, what am I supposed to be?
I can imagine you're like, wait, I'm young, and I know there's something hot about this, but also really upsetting, which I feel like is most of this movie.
I felt guilty. A little
interesting. Bit. Well, okay, so this movie is pretty horny, and I did not realize how horny this movie was, because at the beginning, like, Charlize Theron and Keanu Reeves have an incredible chemistry in this movie.
They have so much chemistry.
Like, Keanu Reeves is a hit or miss actor for me. I love him so deeply, but like his performances are kind of like mixed sometimes. And I think my theory is that I think it's hard to direct him. I bet he kind of seems very like cool and laissez-faire, and it's hard to get like a convincing emotional performance out of him. But in this movie, he has this chemistry with Charlize Theron. He like pulls her earring off with his mouth. Like
that kiss at the beginning when he is just like necking, and then he like is sucking on her ear, and then the earring comes out. I was like, oh my god, like, this movie is so sexy.
It's so hot. They love each other so much. And I think it makes it even more upsetting as you watch her like kind of downfall in this movie, and you watch her look like she's losing her mind, but is being manipulated by the devil. And it's so, because like they really do establish this like genuine love and connection between these two people, and it's just so upsetting to see that fall apart in a way that I wasn't expecting. And it does fall into that like crazy woman trope, which always frustrates me, of like, she's crazy and she has to die because she's crazy. But
she was right the whole time?
Yeah, she's like, they took my fucking ovaries. And he's like, no, they didn't. And like, hey, the guy fucked me and raped me in the bathroom, and I'm covered in cuts. And he's like, he was in the courtroom with me. You're fucking crazy. And like he puts her away, basically. And
he puts her in a mental hospital.
Just so, I mean, I know it's the 90s. I know it's like common, but it's always so frustrating seeing that, when you're just like, God damn it, this trope is so infuriating. Especially because like, I feel like she does have, and again, this is probably the point, but she feels so much more on his level at the beginning. Like, they feel very equal. They both, like, kind of know what they're doing, but they're happy about it and, like, just trying to, like, move their way through life. And it just
because she knows.
she's like...
she knows that he defends bad people.
Well,
she's okay with it.
She says that when she's, like, in the hospital. She's like, I can't look at myself in the mirror. Like, all of the things that we did to, like, we just turned another eye because we wanted money and material things, and, like, look at what we've become. And again, like, it's so fucking heavy-handed, but it works here because this whole movie is pretty heavy. Like, we've talked about subtleties, but it is a pretty heavy-handed movie. It's like, look,
it's pretty on the nose.
The lawyer is Satan, and they're all bad people.
Yeah.
Like, but
it's
works.
It's really on the nose.
Because it knows what it's doing. It's not trying to be, like, self-serious. Like, it knows.
And I think the fact that,
So, yeah.
I think the fact that it's kind of like fantasy-like, and that there's demons and the devil, it makes it easier to accept. If it was trying to be super realistic, it would be terrible, in my opinion. But Charlize, I think she steals the show.
Oh, she does. Her performance is really good.
Yeah, she's amazing,
incredible in this movie.
Yeah,
I have to ask though, when you were a kid and you got to the scene where she's in church and she throws off her robe,
I was shocked too. Yeah, again, same thing.
Sex and violence.
Same thing. Confused a little bit, like, kind of like looking at her like, oh, she's really pretty. But then at the same time, it's like, this is really wrong. It's kind of making you feel guilty as a warrior audience, you know, because you have the shots of like the body. And again, like you said, it's the 90s. You're objectifying women's body like crazy in this movie. There's like pretty women everywhere, naked. You see like so many
lots of boobs,
naked women. So a lot of boobs. And me as a kid, since I was disturbed, I was a little bit, like I said, I would be guilty. I was like, oh, like it's playing too much with like my senses. But it's effective.
It's very effective.
And also, go.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say this movie is really long, but it scared me so much halfway through that then I was dreading anything that was going to happen. I feel like that's also the main purpose of a scary scene, is to just make you scared for the rest of the movie. A little bit like in The Ring when they open the they open the closet and they see the dead woman with a face like that. It's at the beginning, but then you're scared for the rest of the movie and you're dreading, like, I do not want to see this scene like that again. And I feel like the Devil's Advocate is kind of the same thing with like the sex scenes and the scary scenes. But the thing with the sexy or the horny scenes is that there's always a little part of you be like, oh, you know what? I'm kind of down to see something else. Even though I don't, but I do. Like the elevator scene. I remember the elevator scene, for example.
Oh, yeah.
When he's like, hey, Kevin, don't you want to, fill me in on the case upstairs? And he's like, now. And then you see the two women in the background, like kissing each other and touching each other. And Al Pacino gives him the look like, yeah, like come upstairs. And he's like, and then he turns around and there's Charlize like looking at him like, what
and his mom is there too.
And his mom is there. And me as like a kid, I was like, oh my God,
what's going to happen?
What is happening?
What's going to happen?
They're kissing each other.
And I mean, yeah, and you're like, I was like, as a 7-year-old, I was like, I kind of want to check out what's going on in that elevator. But I know that it's sick. And I know that the thing that was like also really confusing for me was like, I know that these women are demons. So I know that if, I was to fully be like, oh, I want to see them. But no, I know that they would scare me eventually. So all those like kind of like sex and demon, I feel like sex and demon would be the way to describe these moments.
So when I read the book first,
okay,
so I read the book and I remember thinking I read the book maybe 3 or 4 times as a teen, and I was like, this book was really working for me. And I hadn't seen Rosemary's Baby at the time, and so like this was all a new kind of thing, and this idea of the way the movie the way the book unfolds, which is a little different than the movie. In the book, he is not Satan's son. From what I remember, that's not in the book at all. That was something that was added to the movie.
That's kind of better though.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the fact that he's the son, you're like, whatever.
And I don't remember exactly how it ends, but I don't think the Antichrist aspect or the half sister or any of that, I don't think that was in it at all. That was all addition to the movie. But I remember reading the book and really digging it. And then the movie came out, and my dad had read the book, because that's how I got the book. It was my dad's book, and then I had picked it up and I had read it, and I was like, oh, this is really good, and it's very sexy. And so I was like rereading it. And then the movie came out on VHS, and my parents rented it, but they wouldn't let me see it. And I remember when they went to bed, I snuck the movie and I went into my room and I had my TV on very low and I watched it because I was like, I got to see what they're doing with this movie. And I would have been, it came out in 97. It was probably on VHS, either 97 or 98. So I would have been 16 or 17. So this was like sexy, all that kind of stuff was like hitting me. And yes, I'm secretly gay at this time. I wasn't out of the closet, but I was like, this is all titillating in ways that I was not expecting, because it is a very horny movie. Yeah. And I was like, you get to see Keanu Reeves' butt. And I was like, this is really working for me, because I think he's an incredibly attractive human being. And
he looks great. And I think even if his acting sometimes, I mean, I like his acting regardless, because I think like he has like this kind of likable on the screen thing.
He has so much charisma.
Yeah. I look at him, I forgive. I'm always like up for a good Keanu Reeves movie.
Yeah. Oh, me too. It's just funny.
Absolutely.
Thinking, like, we talked about Bram Stoker's Dracula, like, love him, but his accent in that movie is not great. But it's okay. We forgive it because it's Keanu.
and me, I'm French, and when I was a kid, I watched it in like French version dubbed. So that for me, like, that's okay. I was like not. Sense. Yeah. I mean, now I can figure out accents. I can be like, "Oh, this is terrible." But back in the day,
you were like, "Fuck it, I don't care."
Yeah.
What was I going to bring up? There was something I wanted to mention.
I can bring up a lot of other things about this movie.
Yes,
if you like.
Please go.
I like the fact that. Well, first, I like the fact that they bring Donald Trump in the.
That's right. Oh my God, I know.
They're like, oh, Donald Trump was supposed to be at this party, and looking back now, I'm like, this is so smart. I was like, yes, Donald Trump would be at a party like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
he sure as fuck would.
And I feel like this movie in the themes, it didn't age at all. I mean, okay, maybe it did a little bit, but it's still tackling some stuff that are so true to nowadays, like vanity, like people, you know, they can cause evil just for the sake of like self-love or what they, you know, what they want for themselves. The power of money, the power of the law. If you have money, you have the law on your side. And like I said, the fact that they mentioned Donald Trump is kind of like funny. And it's so, it's like as if it foreshadowed so much, you know? So, you know, it's like, it's a movie that was so relevant nowadays.
It's like unfortunately very timeless in a way, especially like flashing forward.
It's very timeless.
And like, because I
flashing forward,
it feels very 90s, but at the same time very relevant, because it's like we still have these issues with corruption and the way people are treated and the way we think about lawyers and men getting off from crimes that they committed because they're wealthy. Like, it's unfortunately a timeless movie, which is frustrating to see, because it's like, again, we all know it's hitting us pretty heavily with like lawyers are evil. But, like, it's true. it's just, it's true. And I mean, like, yeah, it is just incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny to see that. And to see that, then they say, like, because I like the fact that they tackle the law, like, as, like, a way, to me, it's, like, more like, okay, the law or the institutions, like, the law is a way for evil to sneak in and use it.
Well, Al Pacino even says, like, the law is our way into absolutely everything. When he says, like, why lawyers? He's like, law gets you into every aspect of the world. And, like, that's the best way to infiltrate your way into things and, like, be a part of all of the goings-ons in the world.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. And at the end, it's going to be the new vanity kind of, like, way for evil to sneak in will be the press, which I think is either the law or the press. It's still relevant nowadays, or it's still like it's still like interesting. I don't know how they would picture evil in the press, but you know, like,
it would be an interesting version of this movie.
Exactly, it would be an interesting version of this movie. But that's the face camera when he breaks the wall at the end. Also.
Yes. The moments. Okay, we gotta talk about Al Pacino.
I was gonna say we gotta talk about Al Pacino, man.
We talk about Al Pacino.
Before we do, though, there is one thing that I found out when I was looking into this movie. At one point, Joel Schumacher was supposed to direct it. Okay, and I'm like, can you imagine? Because this movie already has like gothic undertones, particularly when we get to like his Al Pacino's is like mansion and the way it's like brutalism meets like gothicness and like modernism, but also brings back to mind like Hammer horror in some ways. And I'm like, can you imagine if this was like directed by Joel Schumacher, who's like the king of excess?
Oh my god!
In the 1990s, like that would have been
so much more colorful. She would have had to break green walls in her apartment.
Yeah. She would have stuck with it. Yeah. It would have been even more heavy-handed, maybe.
Oh, yeah. The visual, it would have been very heavy-handed with the visual language. With absolutely. The visuals, and Brad Pitt was supposed to be Keanu Reeves' character.
Okay.
The original.
I could see Brad Pitt doing that.
Yeah.
I could see him do that.
Okay. Not bad.
But I like maybe the more, because the style, I think it's kind of more generic, or it's not as stylistic.
Yeah, it's not stylish,
but I think it's
at all. It's very much like,
it kind of serves.
Yeah,
it's really 90s. I mean, I like the shots though. I think the shots, it's good camera movement. I think it's still really well framed, and it's like Hollywood standard. It's good, but it doesn't have like the real like big identity.
No,
which honestly, again, going back to the dressing room scene, I think the fact that the style of this movie is like this made the dressing room scene scare me even more.
Yeah,
because had it been kind of like goth over the top, I would have been like, okay, hold on, there's going to be some weird stuff. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is really, like you said, a courtroom movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the effect too. It was like, oh, let's just be kind of like straightforward with that and not do that. I know also that Al Pacino didn't want to be the devil. He didn't.
No.
Yeah.
They took him a couple attempts to get him.
Oh, really?
On board. Mm-hmm.
Which it's hard for me to understand, because I think he does such a good job. I think he's such a devilly guy.
Yeah.
I think, the way
He's so fucking good in this movie. This is his best role of all time.
Honestly, he's like, he electrifies me whenever he's on screen. I think that's also one of the reasons why I kept watching the movie. It's because I knew he was up to no good in every scene, but I would still.
He's so mischievous in this. The way he looks, he has this wry sensibility to him where he knows where things are going. He knows what's happening, and he's very playful with it. Like the way his eyes will tinkle or the way that he'll lick his lips. Like there's just this, I don't know.
Yeah, he's like, yeah.
It's just, he brings such a different dimension to this film that is slowly becoming more camp as his performance continues, where he starts off as like, oh, he's just like a very rich, powerful lawyer guy. He's running this whole firm. But then like you start to see that kind of playfulness inject, whether it's the elevator scene where he's like his smile, his big like Cheshire grin trying to convince him.
When he whispers something to this woman's ear and then he gets a blowjob at the party and
like,
then he stares at Keanu Reeves like, you see what's going on?
He's like, you could have this too, man. Like this is, it's that kind of, I don't know. It just, he's electrifying in this performance. And he's also he's very sexy in this movie for some reason. There's something about him that just
he's so hot in this fucking movie. He just carries himself like someone who knows he's hot shit. And it's so hot. Like, holy shit. And it's just amazing. And it's funny to hear that he didn't want the role because he really hams it up, especially in the back half when he's just like yelling about being the devil and like ranting for 30 minutes about the state of the world.
I could listen to him rant forever.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Me too. And it's so good, but it's so funny that he didn't want this part because he really fucking kills it. Like he's just
he's amazing. I wonder what he thinks of it.
Yeah.
I wonder what he thinks. Maybe he hates it. Maybe he loves it. I don't know.
I think this is one of my favorite of his performances. I'll be perfectly honest. And that seems weird to say, but it just, I don't know. He knows how to do a monologue too. And this movie gives him some really juicy monologues to go into.
I mean,
once we get to like that last 30 minutes, because what I remembered about this movie, I hadn't seen it since I had stole that tape from my parents and watched it in my bedroom. But I remembered a couple things. I remember the dressing room. I remember Charlize Theron in the church. And I remember the last 30 minutes is basically like one giant monologue almost of him talking with interjections from the cast. But mostly it's the Al Pacino show at that moment. And that is all I remembered from it. And so I'm getting to the end and as I was rewatching this, like Charlize Theron has killed herself horrible. We're getting to that last moment where
streets
Keanu,
are empty.
Yes, walking down that empty street, which is this
is the officially when everything is fantasy.
Yes,
this is like
we have completely entered hell. We're like, I think you could, and I wasn't thinking about this until after I watched it, but I think you could probably make a connection with this and like Dante's Inferno. I think that there is like a passage into hell in this movie that you could probably relate to the different circles in some way or form. But we get to that,
I mean, like his
point.
name is John Milton. Isn't his name John Milton?
Milton.
Okay. His name's John Milton.
Like, like Paradise.
Paradise
it's
Lost.
So fucking obvious. Like Paradise Lost.
It's on the nose. Yeah, it's on the nose.
At least his name isn't Lucifer. We've encountered a few movies where his name is just fucking Lucifer.
Guys, in this other movie, Angel Heart, you know Angel Heart?
Yes.
With Mickey Rourke and De Niro. His name is Louis Cypher.
That's what I was thinking of.
You know, talking about...
Yeah.
I love this movie too, by the way. I love this movie too. But talking about like 90s on-the-nose thrillers about the devil, I love these movies. But
Lucy. Loose Cypher. Like,
Lucy,
goddamn. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, Al Pacino, I want to say... some of the stuff he says in that monologue is, first, it's kind of hilarious when he says, one thing he says, love overrated. It's just like biochemically equivalent to eating large quantities of chocolate.
Yes.
Who comes up with that?
Just fucking incredible.
But I feel like as a devil, like pleading his case, as being the devil, I think he does it better than anybody else in movie. When he says God likes to watch.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going with. The idea. Let me give you a little inside information about God. God likes to watch. He's a prankster. Think about it. He gives man instincts. He gives you this sort of extraordinary gift. And what does he do? I swear for his own amusement, his own private cosmic gag reel, he sets the rules and oppositions. And he's like, look but don't touch, touch but don't taste, taste but don't swallow. And that moment when he does that laugh, he's like, because it's like a double entendre. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's so good. And the writing, I have to say that the writing for his monologues is just... It's
really good. It's so good. He said, I'm a humanist. He's like, I'm closer to... And I mean... He's closer to man than God is to man, in a way.
Yeah.
That's what he says. He gives, the whole thing about free will. And I think when I was rewatching this movie, I was like, okay, this movie feels sometimes a little bit conservative, like the people from the South, they love God. The people from the city are filthy. The people from the city like sex. The people from the city are taken over by the devil. So in that aspect, I was like, this look a little bit like super, and I'm not religious at all. So it looked either. a little bit conservative in that sense.
With his mom in particular, his mom is like, everything that she's saying is true. Like, it definitely just believes in that.
She's
whole,
like the church lady that is like absolutely true, and she speaks with that.
So let's talk about the ending then, because at the end, Keanu Reeves is basically like, they're like, okay, so you have to fuck your half sister and make the Antichrist, and that's like how we're gonna keep this shit going. But he has to do it of his own free will. And so Keanu Reeves is like making out with his naked half sister. Fucking Al Pacino's reciting some weird Latin and like watching them about to fuck. Like, it's so like, ooh.
With some statues moving.
Yeah,
the sculpture
is like the
so
sculpture,
good.
The painting of people just like moving and kind of fucking, and they're demons.
And I think they're fucking too. It's kind of hot too.
It's just like really, it's like very erotic and bizarre, and everyone's just watching about to fuck. And then Keanu Reeves kills himself. He's like, free will, motherfucker. Like, I'm not doing this shit, and shoots himself in the head. And then I guess he's resurrected or like given a second chance because he doesn't. That's the reading I got. Did he get a second chance because he like didn't fuck with the devil? Like, what? Because someone grows wings at some point.
Because then he realized it was like some kind of a nightmare, and he's
like
in the bathroom defending the pedophile.
Yeah, was it a dream? I thought it was like, oh, you're getting redeemed and you're getting sent back to fix. I don't. You know, maybe it's not
like sliding doors, right?
Yeah, it's like, it feels like, wait,
two paths now.
What is happening?
I usually hate movies where at the end it's like, it was a dream. I usually don't like that at all. The way I looked at that, I was like, what if it's like he's in another dimension, or it's like another version of himself? And basically what it's trying to tell, for me, in my opinion, what it's trying to tell is like, okay, he may dodge the bullet of evil through law, like I said, but is he going to dodge that bullet through the press? Because at the end of the day, people are vain, regardless of the field, regardless of the institution. Maybe. I don't know. So
my funny thought that I thought of while we were talking is this a prequel to Constantine, when Keanu Reeves is hunting demons in that movie? Because this is where he learns that they're real, and he quits being a lawyer, and he just decides to hunt demons.
It's like, I'm just going to slay some demons.
It's the prequel to Constantine.
Maybe.
I think we should make that canon.
I think we should. Yeah. I declare it canon. I declare it that way. I love that I love Constantine so much. But yeah, the ending is just like weirdly candy coated. But it's a 90s movie. Like, I get it. Like,
it's a 90s movie.
And it kind of fits the camp of it all. You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense that it has this, like, ridiculous ending. I didn't hate it at all. It's just funny that it's like, oh, he gets a second chance or something, and he has this big moment of being like, I will not defend the pedophile. Like, congratulations.
Yeah. And he does, he quits. He could have just done a terrible cross-examination. I would have done a terrible job and then not convinced the jury. He needed to get, banned from the bar. He needed to, make it a scene. It's very campy. It's like, I see it, I was not a filmmaker in the 90s. Maybe had I been 30 years old in the 90s watching this, I would have been like, this movie is not good. I don't know. To me, I forgive a lot of things about this movie, and I only see the good things about it.
But let's speaking of which, take us back. So you mentioned a couple of the scenes that scared you. By the end of the movie, did it leave you kind of traumatized, or how were you able to like go to sleep easy that night, or how did it affect you? by the end.
Well, honestly, that night I was just seeing that face. I was just seeing that face in the dark. The next morning, I remember I woke up and then my brother was rewatching some of the hot scenes, like in the morning, because my older he was like older, and yeah, he was rewatching the ending when the half sister is naked and all, and he was like, this was a good movie. This is a good movie. and I don't know. I think for a long time I avoided the subject. I honestly avoided the subject of this movie. I was scared. I was really scared of that of the demon face, and then I was scared of like the fact that the face can morph and look like like that. But the whole ending, when I was a kid, it didn't really. Like I said, I was traumatized, and then I was like confused. I was 7 years old, so everything about the law, everything about vanity, that was like over my head. I didn't understand any of that. I just saw the perverty. I just saw that he was like making out with his sister, and so I think the ending was just a little bit more of disturbing sexual, but still aroused.
That disturbing sexual trend.
And I thought, at the time I thought that she was really pretty, the sister, and I also thought, that's my personal memory. I remember that when I watched the movie, when we introduced the half sister, I automatically thought she was, to me as a 7-year-old, more attractive than Charlize Theron. And I think in the movie they also try to make it like that, because Keanu Reeves also is like, oh shit, I'm attracted to this woman. So that again, it didn't play in my favor, because I was like, I'm attracted to, because as a 7-year-old, you're still, you're already kind of like, you're already responsive to sexual things, I want to say. So I was already kind of, trying to figure out, that she was attractive, but then the movie was telling me not to.
Yes.
So it was kind of weird, and the ending was a lot of that for me, and the statues were kind of like, I remember the statues that I remember that.
The statues are it's so good, particularly.
But it's such a good,
when they're real at that one moment, when they just like look at on the screen, and it's just actually people, dressed up in paint and whatnot. That moment is really good, and then we get the digital image, which I still think looks really good, considering what they were working with back in the 1970 or 1997.
I think it's really smart to have like the statues like that, because like the traditional Greek statues, like it was all about the body. It was all about like, like how could they make like, the muscles and the perfect body and the blah, blah, blah. And now it's kind of like the standards of what's like a really beautiful body and like art, like traditional artistic things. And so me as a kid, I was really seeing those, I don't know how to explain, like those sexy scenes. It was a little bit like, oh, this is as if it was like a fruit that you're not supposed to eat in a way. And when he says like the devil, it's all about like the flesh and the desire from the earth, nothing, not forget about grace, forget about that. It's like very physical and very like your desires are like your impulses and again, as a 7-year-old, that kind of speaks to you, because you're discovering all that. You're discovering that you have like those, and then and like I said, as a 7-year-old, it's kind of weird because you kind of feel guilty. Then you kind of feel like, oh wait, at some point, like I said, I kind of wanted to get in that elevator. I remember that scene clearly. I was like, I kind of want to get into that elevator. I want to check that out. I'm curious. But then I'm like, oh, is that the devil? It's like would I be easily convinced by the devil because I would get into that elevator? I would, and I think Al Pacino is like so sexy that he, and I'm not say that as a man, but generally as someone who who wants to flirt or wants to seduce, men or women. He's kind of like everything you would like to be able to do.
Oh yeah.
He looks at you the right way. He says the right thing. He says like, "Oh, put your hair back." He says, so you look at him as as a kid that hasn't discovered, what's flirting yet, I'm like, oh my God. So I kind of need to be him.
Yeah.
I kind of need to learn how he gets all these,
Yeah.
Yep.
all these people to love him or to sleep with him or to be obsessed with him or to, everybody lets him in. And we know he's a monster, but he's so charming.
He's so charming. And at the one moment, I know, Mary Beth, this moment jumped out at you too, when he touches the holy water and looks
and
up
he
at
looks
the camera.
He's like,
I tweeted a picture of it today because I was like, this is the best moment in cinematic history. It's just so fun. It's like the middle of this like funeral for one of the guys who got murdered by demons or some shit, and he's just like sitting in the back of it, and like Keanu Reeves runs out, and Al Pacino's just being like a little like saucy minx in the background, like looking up at the stained glass in the church and touching the holy water for fun, and he's just like, ooh.
He's like, ah.
Sorry, a train just went by my apartment. But it's just, he just is hamming it up so much and has those moments where he's just like, haha, like I'm in on the joke and so are you. And that's what makes, like, takes you out of this movie in a fun way, not in a way that is like, it feels like it fits. And for such a long movie, it feels all necessary. I feel like this is a movie that needs the length. It feels like it all makes sense because it doesn't feel like it's overstaying its welcome, which I'm happy about because I'm always like, 2.5 hours. But this one, it felt justified to be 2.5 hours. I didn't feel it as much as I have with other movies of that length. Do we want to wrap up and give this our rating out of 5?
Sounds good.
All right, Terry.
Okay, so how do we do that? Like each?
Yeah, so we'll each give it. So Terry, you go first. How many Al Pacinos breaking the fourth wall out of 5 do you give The Devil's Advocate?
I was wondering before we were recording, I was like, what do I want to, what would I give this? And honestly, this movie, I think straddles the line so well between being a down-to-earth courtroom drama and also kind of the 1990s era of demonic movies. It bridges that so well that I think, even though it's 2.5 hours long, it feels propulsive through the entire film. And I don't know, this movie like really just kind of tickled my funny bone watching it as an adult in a way that I was not expecting. I was not expecting this sort of like mischievous nature that this movie operates on, and it worked incredibly well for me, to the point that I have to give it, I think, 4 Al Pacino breaking the fourth walls out of 5, because I had a wonderful time rewatching this, and it was like every time I would get to a part, I was like, okay, this might be kind of overstanding its welcome, then it would just flip the script on me, and then before you know it, we're at Al Pacino just hamming it up at the end and shouting about gods and demons, and I'm just like, yes, give this all to me, give this excess to me. I just love it. So I'm gonna go with 4. What about you, Mary Beth?
I'm also going with 4. I was pretty committed to that 4 before we started, because I was like, this movie is so much fun. It's tonally insane. It commits to the bit. It is a fun courtroom drama that becomes this wild, crazy demon movie, and all of the performances are incredible. The chemistry with Keanu and Charlize is just like off the wall. Love a good horny 90s movie. I mean, it's just mwah, chef's kiss. I want to show it to all my friends. They probably won't appreciate it like I will, but it's just, it's like Al Pacino is like most of the stars too, or most of my rating here, because he just is having so much fun, and not enough movies let Al Pacino have fun like this. I feel like it's always very serious, and he's a great actor, but watching him get to have fun in a movie like this is just so incredible, because he is such a talented actor. So to see him get to tap into that kind of campier, like over the top, like hyper exaggerated side is just so cool and fun. So yeah, it's 4 Al Pacino's breaking the fourth wall for me. And Pierre, you have the final word. What about you? How many Al Pacino's breaking the fourth wall do you give Devil's Advocate?
I think I'm gonna give a good 4.5.
Hell yeah. Cool.
And a half, because it's the movie that scared the crap out of me, so I have to give like an extra just for that. Kudos to the filmmakers for that. And it's a movie that I don't think it's trying to be more than what it actually is, and so I forgive. Like I said, I forgive a lot, and it's the best devil. I mean, to me, it's the best devil. he's the best devil. So kudos to Al Pacino for that. Sex, campiness, scares, and Al Pacino. I mean,
what more could you want?
What else do you need? And 90s plus Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron, which, by the way, Charlize Theron was I think it's one of her breakouts role, right?
Yeah.
I was looking because I think she was 21 when she filmed this. She still looks so baby faced in this movie. It surprised me because
I think people from Hollywood, they saw her. They were like, okay, she's really good.
Mm-hmm.
She was bound to, yeah. So I mean, like you said, Mary Beth, the performances, So yeah, 4.5.
Hell
awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pierre, for joining us to talk about Two Witches and this incredible movie. Where can our listeners find you? And the floor is yours. Do you have anything you can plug or you want to talk about?
Well, they can watch the movie Two Witches on Apple TV, on Amazon, and on Arrow Player. I think it's also on Google Play or something like that. If they want, they should. Check it out. And me, you can follow me on Instagram. Pierre Tsiga. That's my handle. You can follow me on Twitter with the same handle, I think. That's pretty much it. But that's
cool. And we'll put all that in the show notes, listeners, so you can easily find it.
Perfect.
So, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Devil's Advocate? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
Please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe, and sign up for our Patreon if you want to help support us.
Please and thank you. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.